Hello, America. If you want to get a sense of the direction we're headed as a country, you shouldn't need to look any further than this. Our government has become so twisted that we actually need a congressional committee on the weaponization of the federal government. Our media has become so perverted that they hardly ever talk about what they're finding. Just the mere fact that we even need this to begin with, that says it all. And the persecution coming directly from the DOJ currently stands front and center. Tonight, I want to take you on a little trip around the United States justice system under Joe Biden. But first, because this is a Glenn Beck show, a little history. This is the modern representation of Lady Justice. She stands with a sword in hand, showing that justice is swift. She also carries with her a set of scales, showing how evidence will be weighed and measured. And she wears a blindfold, representing that justice will always be blind. No matter rich or poor, powerful or weak, justice is blind. Now, take a look around the news. Does that seem accurate at all? Is justice blind? Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. But let me go back to history. Did you know that the symbol of Lady Justice didn't always have a blindfold? It wasn't until the 16th century that the symbol of blind justice began to represent impartiality and honesty. It wasn't until the 18th century that justice was blind became the standard. But the blindfold on Lady Justice was never originally intended to represent impartiality. The blindfold first showed up in this image from the book of Ship of Fools in the late 1400s. It is a court jester adding the blindfold, not to show how impartial and fair the system is, but how foolish and corrupt it was. A blind judge was clueless and couldn't make smart judgments. A blind jury refused to listen to the evidence and weigh them on the facts. Convictions were delivered, see if this sounds familiar, on popularity, politics, and spite. A blind justice system was ultimately one thing: a tool for the state. Now, I don't know about you, but in this context, it seems like we're living the 1400s, and I feel like we've been psyoped over the idea of blind justice over the past, 500 years. But take a look at what's currently happening under Biden's DOJ. Does it represent this or this? Just currently what is happening. Guide to Donald Trump's 4 criminal cases. The current regime's main political rival has been hit with 4 major criminal investigations, one of which has already resulted in 34 felonies. And this one was the weakest of the entire lot. Do you remember when Donald Trump was using the campaign slogan, "Lock her up, lock her up"? He never did, because in America we don't do that. But now, who's going to take on this lot? It's ridiculous. In an era of this, anything is possible. One of Trump's allies, Steve Bannon, was just ordered to prison for contempt of Congress. But wait a minute. Wasn't Biden's attorney general guilty of exactly the same thing? He's not being prosecuted by the Department of Justice. Wait, get out. You mean the organization he heads, and at the appointment and direction of his boss, President Biden, refuses to prosecute their own agents? Truly shocking. But when you look at it like this, it all makes sense. Our justice system today is the same as it was during the 1400s in Europe, or it's getting closer every day. It is an agent of the state. Oh, but wait. What about Hunter Biden's conviction last week? He was just convicted on 3 federal gun charges, and his tax problems are still in play. That trial is for September. Does that blow up the narrative? Are we back to blind justice? Or there are people, even in the illustrious and extremely trustworthy mainstream media, that are now making the case that there is no case, that justice is blind. In fact, Jonathan Chait over at New York Magazine goes so far to say that Hunter Biden's conviction blows up Republican conspiracy theories that the Biden administration is weaponizing the justice system. He even called me out by name, and he calls you out, this audience, because apparently New York Magazine just thinks we're all too dumb to understand the Hunter trials, both the gun and the tax cases. They were never allowed to happen. How did it happen? Well, you know, I'm actually glad you asked, because Jonathan Chait never mentions Hunter's plea deal with Biden's Justice Department. He doesn't mention it once. Hunter Biden's lawyers made a deal with the DOJ to give Hunter Biden a slap on the wrist over his tax crimes. They did not want the gun charge to go to trial. Oh, there's this other part of the diversion in the agreement. The United States agrees not to criminally prosecute Biden outside the terms of this agreement for any federal crimes that are committed by the first son for which the statute of limitations has not already expired. So if it wasn't for a judge, right, because this would have been included in any crimes that were brought up against the Foreign Agents Registration Act or any of the money laundering or anything else. They were going to give him blanket immunity, but a judge called them on it. And wouldn't you know, the alleged tax crimes and the alleged FARA complications are the ones that inconveniently always included the name Joe Biden in some way. If not for this judge, who still believes in blind justice, we'd never know about the secret agreement between Hunter's lawyers and his father's Department of Justice. Is this just another one of those Republican conspiracy theories that done got blowed up by a minor gun charge? Here's a conspiracy theory. If I were Hunter's lawyers, I'd tell the DOJ, go ahead, let the gun trial go to court, as it did. If I were Biden's DOJ, I'd say, hey, no worries, you can appeal and go all the way to the Supreme Court. Biden's lawyers would say, yes, we'll argue that the law is unconstitutional because of the Second Amendment. Biden's DOJ would then say, perfect. That way we'll have Republicans fighting for you and we all win. Now there's a conspiracy. Or maybe that is the plan. Maybe that is the plan. No. There's no proof of or evidence of any of that, but there is a ton of evidence backing up the claims that Biden has weaponized the justice system to go after Donald Trump, Elon Musk, you. And I don't expect the journalists within the mainstream media to do any journalisming about it. But it's all there in the White House visitor logs. You want to find them? Unredacted court documents, and something they all have seemed to lose, and that is little common sense. I'll show you when we come back. Now, I want to tell you why it's important for you to have a Jace case. Nobody who looks at our economy for more than a minute or two thinks that it's getting better. Nobody who looks at the state of the world thinks it's getting better. We could get bad inflation. We could have a dollar collapse. We could be at war. When people aren't able to pay their expenses, falling further and further behind, consumer sentiment is at an all-time low. Who can blame you for going, you know what, I think maybe. And we've seen our overrun healthcare system, what it looks like when the economy is booming. Imagine the economy falling apart and the dollar falling apart. The Jace case is a way for you to protect yourself and your family. It's a personalized emergency kit that contains essential antibiotics and medications that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. It provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. You just fill out a simple form online and you'll have it in case you need it. There are also add-on options like EpiPens and ivermectin. Did he say ivermectin? He should go to jail. Jace Medical encourages you to take your family's health into your own hands. Go to jace.com, JASE.com. Enter the promo code Beck at checkout for a discount on your order. Promo code Beck at jace.com. For those of us who can see the world for what it is and have taken the red pill, let's suspend common sense for a minute. Let's pretend the Democrats don't actually have it out for Donald Trump. Well, this would be a world in which they didn't try to impeach him 2 times, where Democrats didn't launch an old civil suit against him based off hearsay, where they didn't convict him on 34 felonies in a case that everyone considered weak and stupid, and even the FEC didn't pick it up. It's a federal crime tried in state court. What? All of which have their own problems. All of these things, multiple degrees of weirdness, and I've never seen that before, according to experts. Let's suspend this for a minute and say, if this was a normal citizen, the ACLU would probably get involved with a case of cruel and unusual punishment or something. But it's not a normal citizen. It's the former president of the United States and the current leading candidate for president and the main political rival to the regime. Let's toss all of that out. Let's forget it. Imagine common sense doesn't even exist. We'll eliminate any bias we might have, and let's just look at the facts here. New York Magazine. They say essentially that we're all idiots for thinking that Biden's administration is involved in the political lawfare against Trump. I wonder why they would think that. Well, we know that before Alvin Bragg brought the weakest, dumbest case against Donald Trump, he was bragging about how he had sued the former president over 100 times. His remarks while campaigning for district attorney prompted his Democratic rival to say Bragg attacked Trump just for political advantage. Okay, kind of sounds like this, doesn't it? But to help with Bragg's case, he didn't look for the most talented and high-priced lawyers in New York City. He didn't scour the talent at Harvard Law. He went to Biden's Justice Department, where we find a guy named Michael Colangelo. He was brought on board. Now, when he was at the DOJ, he was number 3 behind Attorney General Merrick Garland. So this dude went from working for Biden's Attorney General to working for Alvin Bragg? I mean, that's not even a lateral move, dude. That's a big down move. Does that make sense or common sense at all? And remember, we're suspending common sense for a second on this, but with just this information alone, does it seem like you should go, I wonder what's up with that? But Colangelo has a bit more, shall we say, interesting work history. He also worked with the New York Attorney General, Letitia James. Now, what was she doing again? My Trump indictment and conviction history is getting a little convoluted. I'm trying to remember. Oh, that's right. She went after the entire family and ordered them to pay nearly $500 million. So just with these 2 cases alone, well, can we flowchart it here just a little bit on a chalkboard? Because I'm not having a problem, but I think the mainstream media is having a problem. We have the DA, Alvin Bragg, who has made it his personal mission to prosecute President Trump. Members of his own party claim this was about political advantage. Going up from there, we have New York AG, Letitia James, who also has a political vendetta, not just against Trump, but his entire family, and ran on I'm gonna get him. Then we have Michael Colangelo, who has ties to both Bragg and James. He was also brought in from his lofty position as number 3. His boss is the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland, and Merrick Garland's boss is Joe Biden. Let me go out and help the district attorney in New York? I mean, Jay, we're smelling like idiots here, aren't we? If you don't smell a rat here? No, it's all above the level. Nothing to see here, nothing. Hunter Biden got dinged on a minor gun charge. That renders all of this stuff mute. Well, no, it doesn't. But let's move from the hush money case, because back when all of this was getting underway, it was considered the weakest and dumbest. The federal government passed on this, okay? The FEC said there's no crime here. They wouldn't let that guy testify. But let's look at what the experts were calling the strongest charges against Trump, the classified documents case. Now, let's get away from flowcharts for just a second and have a little fun with timelines. I'm trying to make this as easy for the mainstream media as possible. But there are 3 dates that I want to highlight right at the top here. August 8th, 2022, which was the day of the raid of Mar-a-Lago, and probably the day the majority of the country found out, wow, that's weird. What's going on here? And then 6 months earlier, February 9th, the day before my birthday in 2022, this was the day the Department of Justice claimed they found out about the entire case after they received a criminal referral from the National Archives. And then November 2nd, 2022. This was the date that Joe Biden's lawyers stated they found classified documents at the Penn Biden Center. But remember, it's all okay, because in this instance, it was just Joe self-reporting. Oh, and he's just a senile old man, so no harm, no foul. let's just forget about all of that. Now, keep in mind, because it's important, the raid went down on August 22nd. The DOJ said, yeah, it's crazy, but we didn't get involved until 6 months ago. So for reals, guys, this is not a political hatchet job on the president's main political rival. Like, not at all. The DOJ basically just found out about it. And it came to them from outside of the Department of Justice. It came from the National Archives. And Joe Biden was shocked when he found out. He was flabbergasted. Flabbergasted, a word he still uses. Here's Joe Biden on 60 Minutes right after the raid.
When you saw the photograph of the top secret documents laid out on the floor at Mar-a-Lago, what did you think to yourself, looking at that image?
How that could possibly happen, how anyone could be that irresponsible. And I thought, what data was in there that may compromise sources and methods? By that, I mean names of people who helped, or et cetera. And it's just totally irresponsible.
Totally irresponsible. This is not a political hit in any way, shape, or form. Only Donald Trump could be that irresponsible. Now, based on the documents from the House Oversight Committee and recently redacted court filings, we're able to travel back in time, long before the raid on Mar-a-Lago, long before the DOJ claimed to have been notified by the National Archives outside of the White House, long before the National Archives were recorded to have been even aware of Trump's classified documents. Another hunt for documents began. Now, according to Congress, the director of the Oval Office operations traveled to the Penn Biden Center to, quote, take inventory of President Biden's documents and materials. This was in March 2021. This trip by the White House to inventory Biden's things was never reported by Joe Biden's lawyers. Now, why didn't they leave that out? Well, let's just assume, just for a second, that the White House director of Oval Operations was competent. Do they believe or expect us to believe that they didn't find boxes of documents with the words classified written at the top and the bottom? How could somebody be that irresponsible? And keep in mind, this is before anything came out with Trump and his dealings with the National Archives. This little inventory session preceded a flurry of activity, and we go there next. I got to tell you, I find it exhausting listening to everything the left is doing and knowing that some of my money may be going to them to help. I mean, it makes it so much worse. For 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. And when I say only, trust me, there's only one. Patriot Mobile is a proud supporter of this program, and we're proud to partner with them. Patriot Mobile offers dependable nationwide coverage, giving you the ability to access all three major networks, which means you get the same coverage you've been accustomed to without funding the left. So when you switch to Patriot Mobile, you're sending the message that you support free speech, religious freedom, the sanctity of life, the Second Amendment, and our veterans and first responder heroes. Their 100% U.S.-based customer service team, making switching really easy. You can keep your number, keep your phone, or upgrade. Their team will help you find the best plan for your needs. Just go to patriotmobile.com/Beck or 972-PATRIOT. Get a free month with a $20 activation fee when you use the offer code Beck. Join me. Make the switch today. It's patriotmobile.com/Beck. patriotmobile.com/Beck or call them at 972-PATRIOT. You know, I'm spending an awful lot of time talking about Donald Trump here, but Donald Trump is just one example of how everything has been weaponized. We're going to get into that with Harmeet Dhillon here in just a second and find out if this is Pandora's box. Have they opened something up that we can never close again? That would be truly tragic for the republic. And yes, we are a republic. All right, so let me go back to Biden's inventory. Remember, Biden's staff was inventorying his office at Penn back in March 2021. We also know that his lawyers kept this part of the story a secret. Now, that's just suspicious on its own. Why are you keeping secrets if it's no big deal? But it gets even more suspicious. 2 months after this inventory on Biden, May 5th, 2021, the National Archives lawyer, Gary Stern, sent an internal email voicing concerns of how Trump was handling his documents and that he had discussed everything with the National Archivist, David Ferrero. And he had concerns. But a National Archives employee testified to the FBI that what was going on was, quote, not uncommon, end quote. Well, we know that now because we found out about Mike Pence and they knew about Joe Biden. So let's unsuspend common sense real quick here for just a second. Given the fact that this was brought up 2 months after Biden's office at Penn University was inventoried, and the fact that NARA employees told the FBI that the way Trump was proceeding was not uncommon, is it possible to believe or even think that the National Archives and Biden's White House were somewhat involved in a little tomfoolery here? Is that possible? Is it possible that your best defense would be an offense? You know what? We just found all these things. You know, if they find out, what do we have on? Everybody takes these documents. What do we have on Trump? I mean, it looks suspicious at the very least. Are we idiots for seeing this? Meanwhile, the Biden White House was keeping busy. Less than 2 weeks later, on May 24th, the White House counsel, Dana Remus, contacted an employee of the Department of Defense. Why? To go and retrieve Biden's documents from the Penn Biden administration. Again, was that reported by Biden's lawyers? No. On August 30th, the National Archivist sent Trump's representatives an email informing him that he was obligated to inform both the White House and the Department of Justice over their destruction of 24 boxes of documents. The only problem is that apparently never happened. Why was the National Archives escalating based off an event that doesn't appear to ever have happened? And the escalation continued. On September 1st, NARA lawyer Gary Stern stated that he had already reached out to both the Department of Justice and the White House. Now, the White House visitor logs confirm that the National Archivist met with the White House counsel on both the 2nd and the 9th of September 2021. So wait, hold on. I'm getting a headache. The Department of Justice claimed that they only got involved after receiving a referral in February 2022. But the White House logs show that both the DOJ and the White House were involved in this case, at least in August of 2021. Well, why would you lie about that? Did all of this happen after the secret inventory sessions of Biden's Penn University office? And why was that never reported? On October 5th, NARA lawyer Gary Stern sent another internal email regarding some of Trump's documents that were being used by the January 6th committee. He said that he would run it by Biden's White House. 3 days later, White House counsel rejected Trump's executive privilege. So hang on. A former president's executive privilege is revoked. And then the White House wants us to believe that the current president had no idea what any of this was going on. I was, again, Biden on 60 Minutes.
Have you been briefed, sir, on the top secret documents that were found at Mar-a-Lago?
No.
No one has come to you to warn you that important national security secrets were revealed by the storage of those documents at the former president's home?
I have not personally spoken to anyone in that regard. I'm sure my administration is aware of all of that, and so is the National Security Council, but I have not.
Oh, okay. No idea. No personal conversations. I didn't ever talk to any of Hunter Biden's business partners. But his lawyers are revoking presidential executive privilege on his main political rival, and he had no clue? Really? And meanwhile, Biden's people are sifting through his own boxes from Penn University, both on October 12th and the 13th. Again, never reported by Biden's lawyers. So the National Archives, the DOJ, and the White House were all involved in Trump's classified document case. All the while, Biden's people are scurrying documents from Penn in secret. And the president had no idea. I would say there's a problem in the White House. If we're expected to believe that, that might be a bigger problem. If all of this is happening and they're revoking presidential privilege for his main rival, and he wasn't even consulted, he's not running the place. He's not. According to court documents on January 21st, 2022, it was the Biden administration itself that referred to the National Archives and referred them to the DOJ. Let me say that again. We now know that on the 21st of 2022 in January, the Biden administration referred the National Archives to the DOJ. So the National Archives said, hey, there's something going on. And the White House said, really? We'll get back to you on that. And then the White House said, you should talk to the Department of Justice. It sounds kind of like they were involved a little bit, but maybe it's just me. The rest is history. Merrick Garland officially authorized a criminal investigation in March 2022, an investigation that had actually been going on since September 2021. But maybe Merrick Garland didn't know what his people were doing beneath him. And in November 2022, we found out about the unexpected discovery of Biden's classified documents at Penn University, even though it appears as though that began in March 21. Now, none of this is a conspiracy theory. The evidence shows the Biden White House was heavily involved in the Trump case from the beginning. You just saw the documents. Biden's DOJ knew about it before they originally stated they were involved. Wow, that's hard to do. Wow. We weren't involved at all, didn't know anything about it, even though we were informed months before. What? And this was all happening while Biden's staff were sneaking boxes out of his office at Penn, and his lawyers conveniently left that part out. Wow. This administration and DOJ is out of control because President Biden and apparently Merrick Garland didn't know all of this stuff was happening behind the scenes. No clue. Which do you prefer to believe? That Biden and the administration and the DOJ are lying? Or that Biden, his administration, and the DOJ are that incompetent and clueless? I could make a case for both, I guess. Trump was indicted and publicly dragged through the mud. His home was raided. The FBI rummaged through the bedrooms of his wife and his son, went through their underwear drawer. And Joe Biden walked because he's a really nice guy. He was an old man. He was a little confused. But Hunter Biden? Well, justice is blind. He was given a minor gun charge. And we're not even sure it's constitutional. But nothing has been weaponized. It's all good. We're totally fine. Are we? That's Donald Trump. Now let me talk to you about a long list of other people that may include you. This government has weaponized. Can we put this back into the drawer and lock that drawer back up? We ask Harmeet Dhillon in a minute. Have you ever been looking for a house and you didn't know if you could trust the real estate agent? You don't feel comfortable sometimes talking in front of people. You'd be like, yeah, well, that's definitely not the master bedroom over there, because that would surely be racist. Boy, I hate those people, huh? You want somebody that you can trust, somebody who is like you, somebody who's not playing this woke game, somebody who you can say, I want my kids to be in good schools. And they don't immediately go, oh, you mean one without homosexuals and Mexicans? No, But you also need a real estate agent that can help you navigate through some of the hardest negotiations you'll ever do, the most important. We will pair you at realestateagentsitrust.com with the best real estate agent in your area. If we have one. We don't have one in every area because it takes us a long time. We have a waiting list of people that want to be on this of about 10,000 people. We want to make sure we know all of these people. I don't charge you for the tip on who you should call, and I certainly want you to do your own homework. realestateagentsitrust.com. You need somebody to help you buy or sell a house? Go to realestateagentsitrust.com. The weaponization of our justice system is insane. If you live in a blue state and you're not only under attack from the Department of Justice, but your state attorney general and the district attorney, imagine living in San Francisco as an outspoken conservative. Well, my next guest law firm is based in San Francisco. Welcome back to Harmeet Dhillon. She is a legal warrior. She's the founder and CEO of the Center for American Liberty. She's also the former vice chairwoman of the California Republican Party. Harmeet, thank you so much for joining us. I was just going through some of the Trump cases where they are, going after him and weaponizing. Is this... You've been a lawyer for a long time. Is this the worst you've ever seen, the weaponization of government?
Absolutely, Glenn, and thanks for asking. And in the 31 years that I've been practicing law, I've never seen what we've seen this year in the United States. And it's been escalating somewhat, but to the point where we are seeking to and actively convicting our political opponents in this country. We've never really had that in the modern era. And it's not just targeting President Trump, the deliberate targeting in multiple jurisdictions of his attorneys, the attempts even beyond President Trump of trying to get the law licenses of lawyers who criticize BLM or engage in wrongthink is prolific. And the goal here is to terrorize attorneys away from representing conservative causes and clients. And it's really a breakdown of the whole legal system when you look at it at that level.
I'm sure you saw what came out of Connecticut a couple of days ago, where the Bar Association is saying if you say anything against this judge in the New York case, we could take your law license away. I mean, it is bone-chilling what is going on.
Oh, and this has been creeping up on us for several years with speech codes that, if you're critical of gender pronouns or if you are perceived to be intolerant or criticize the legal system in general. This has actually been something that's been percolating through the bar associations and licensure boards of multiple jurisdictions over the years. And to their credit, even some liberal First Amendment attorneys have fought back against these speech codes in Pennsylvania and in other jurisdictions. My law firm won a case in California where they tried to take away a lawyer's license for a tweet where she criticized BLM protesters and said they should be shot, a rhetorical comment that is common in
Right.
normal parlance. And we won that case, but she had to spend a lot of money before she found a nonprofit firm that would help with the First Amendment defense. And other lawyers like John Eastman and multiple other conservative attorneys who've done nothing but give private legal advice to a presidential candidate, or in that
Right.
case, sitting president, have had their licenses suspended or been disbarred, or are worse, facing criminal prosecution in numerous jurisdictions. So this is, if you're a lawyer for President Trump, which I am, your partners are looking at you and wondering if you're going to be there with your law license the next day. And this is truly chilling.
So, I was talking to Alan Dershowitz a couple of weeks ago, and he says the same thing, that he said, I've worked my entire life for this law system. And he said, now lawyers are standing on the sidelines and they're not saying anything, and we're about to lose it. How close do you think we are to losing the justice system?
Well, I think we're going to see when the sentencing occurs, next month, of President Trump in this sham, ludicrous prosecution in New York, which is the worst of the four, the shoddiest of these cases that he's been facing. I personally think the goal here is to trigger civil unrest in this country. And if there's a incarceration sentence passed down, there will be unrest in this country because of people's shock and protest against this. And I think that's going to be used to crack down on conservatives and, again, try to influence the outcome of this election.
So do you
Americans,
believe that this is more about gaining civil unrest than silencing Donald Trump? Or are they just
I think both of
partners?
those things are goals. I mean, so first of all, the January 6th protests that got out of hand, and I don't in any way condone storming the Capitol or violence, but a lot of the people who've been prosecuted are people who walk through open doors. And there's no evidence that they committed any crime or knew that it was unlawful to cross those barriers. So I think that's when you have the rolling prosecutions, the FBI knows who all of those people were at the Capitol. They knew it within 24 hours. They have tracking systems that know that. So people are being arrested today. They're being arrested on a rolling basis. And I think that's deliberate. I think the timing of constant fear being injected into conservatives is deliberate. And I think that triggering further unrest by unlawful prosecution is also deliberate. And I think that it's a way to entrap conservatives into acting out and, again, influencing the outcome of this election. And I think that's a feature, not a bug, of this whole wrongful prosecution scheme that's happening.
So I've brainstormed this with several friends. We've talked about it before, all off the air usually. There is a point to where you do need to stand up and say, these are the shackles of a tyrant. What do you do if they throw him in jail? What's the right thing to do other than to stay calm?
Well, I think the right thing to do is to keep marching towards the ballot box and vote, and also keep our eyes focused on making sure that election is fair and not being intimidated. And the other thing that we have to try to do is, frankly, make common ground with people who may not agree with us, but who are equally shocked at the implications of this. And there are some honest liberals out there. I think Alan Dershowitz would be one. And there are other lawyers, friends I know, who don't support President Trump ideologically, but they're kind of shocked at these abuses of the legal system because they see that if it can be done against him, it can be done against any perceived enemy of the state, and there are many. And so I think that's really what we have to do is look at the Constitution and understand this is bigger than the Biden regime's distortion of it and insist on those constitutional norms.
You know, you say it's bigger than Donald Trump, if they do it to him. You have all of the cases where they're putting people in jail for 10 years for the FACE Act. Then at the same time, the same weaponization, not going after people who are bombing or burning churches or abortion clinics. The grandmas of January 6th, the DOJ claiming that parents are now terrorists in some way or another. Another person was charged this week in Texas for the leak on Texas Children's Hospital doing trans surgeries. Now a nurse is involved. How they even found out she was involved is kind of another story. You have the DOJ, the SEC, et cetera, going after Elon Musk, the ATF going after gun dealers. I mean, they are being very clear what's coming and very clear on what a future regime will look like if they win again, are they not?
Well, I think it has been very clear. First of all, we live in a surveillance state, and that goes back to 9/11. And I was one of the few conservative attorneys more than 20 years ago who pointed out that if we allow a surveillance state in the name of national security, we're not going to be secure, and we're going to have a surveillance state. And that's what we have right now. We have an open border. We have a president who's making a mockery of national security, at the same time weaponizing national security tools against American citizens, like this nurse, like this doctor, like parents, and just you name it. And the goal is to fundamentally change our society through repression and really state violence. That's what it is. But you know what, Glenn, I'm going to take a little different tack here. As a conservative civil rights lawyer, I think conservatives have been far too complacent about criminal justice issues over the years because it hasn't come to our doors until very recently.
Oh, yeah.
We have civil asset forfeiture is a gross constitutional violation. And yet,
yes.
We've been fine with that. The state has accused people of crimes and taken their property before due process. And I personally experienced that in a civil case where I'm representing a, corporate CEO in a dispute, and suddenly someone with better political connections gets the U.S. attorney involved, and suddenly a criminal prosecution is concocted, and they seize the assets that are used to pay the lawyers. And there wasn't an outrage on the conservative side about that because we're like, oh, he must have done something wrong. And today we have to understand that those fundamental constitutional protections that we have in the Bill of Rights are equally important to conservatives because we are the enemies of the state right now, and we have to stand up for due process, equal protection
for everybody,
the Fourth Amendment, search and seizure rights, and I was giving advice on X today about how that nurse who had the FBI come to her door. The rule one is don't speak to law enforcement that's questioning you without an attorney present. Just
correct.
Don't do it. Cannot assume good faith anymore.
Right. Last question. I saw Rachel Maddow say yesterday that she's afraid that Donald Trump will weaponize the government, put people who disagree like her in jail, or even something as horrible as mounting a campaign to come after her advertisers. And I thought, wow, that's an interesting point of view. We have to play the same game to some degree, but make sure that it's constitutional and accurate and not a vengeance or a vendetta. But if the only way they will learn is if we say, okay, two can play that game. However, we're going to play it based on the facts, based on the law, and the right way. Is that accurate or not?
Well, I agree with you. So first of all, some of the things that Rachel Maddow is complaining about are never going to happen under a conservative regime, like putting her in jail. Why would we? And that's not legal. But coming after your advertisers is something that the left has perfected for years. My friends Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson have had faced multiple advertiser boycotts of their shows on Fox for their critical commentary. And those are the new rules. And so it is legal to persuade your friends and, fellow believers to not consume particular products. That's illegal. The left has weaponized it and organized it very well. The government is involved in that now, of course, with government censorship of conservative voices using proxies like social media companies. And that's the case that we're waiting for a ruling on the Supreme Court, the Murthy case, my case for Rogan O'Hanley against Twitter and against the government of California. So look, Rachel Maddow is not going to ever see the inside of a jail cell for her speech. And she shouldn't. But I don't watch her show, so she's not making her network isn't making any money off of my viewership, and that's a choice I've made. So I think we should all be making those choices on a daily basis.
But have they opened Pandora's box now? Is there a way to carefully put this back right the way it belongs?
Well, here's the difference. And the problem for our side is that, yes, in theory, they've opened Pandora's box. In reality, our side has never been willing to even go close to the line. We play patty cakes on these issues. We have harshly worded letters and we have hearings, but we never actually take action. It has been the case that that the House for years could have used inherent contempt against administration officials who ignore subpoenas, like Merrick Garland, Obama's Attorney General as well. They simply blew off these subpoenas, and we did nothing. When we had the House, the Senate, and the White House in 2017, there were so many reforms that we should have pursued. We did nothing. And so unless we have some fresh leadership, which, I mean, we need about a 90% turnover, in my opinion, on the Republican caucuses in D.C., I'm not holding my breath for, getting even anytime soon.
Harmeet, thank you so much. God bless you.
My pleasure.
Back in a minute.
So you said recently that you thought that you, as an outspoken critic, could be a target yourself. Some people think that sounds overdramatic, but I'm right there with you. I think that he is so vindictive that he will go after, however he has to, through the IRS maybe, or even through sponsors to get us off the air maybe.
My answer was, I'm worried about all of us. I'm no more worried about me than I am worried about everybody in the country. I think it's bad to have somebody saying, give me as much power as you can in this country so I can use it to go after other Americans.
I am worried not just about myself, but I'm also worried about Rachel Maddow. That's our unum. That's the civil rights we should all be for against an out-of-control government. Good night.